there was a lot of hype surrounding MicroStrategy acquiring more Bitcoin, 55,500 more Bitcoin, a big amount. Now holding, 386,700 Bitcoin. Now we're getting a sell-off on Bitcoin. Now the risk model for Bitcoin is still a risk-on environment. It's still positive. And again, we've gone higher, forming divergences with indicators like the RSI. We've even diverged here with risk on. If we can rebound back up or sell off a little bit more and get some kind of rebound, we could still triple divergence on the RSI and with momentum, and we might even see something like that here on risk on. The Bitcoin trend is still positive, so even though we're starting to sell off and we've sold off 5%, again, a rebound with the Tuesday session a little bit, still may end up going a whole lot lower. And I'm flipping now, but again, the trend signals would have to turn bearish for a bigger sell-off. But I'll be watching what happens. Do we go into a risk-off environment, or do we, and the trend starts turning bearish for Bitcoin, or do we pull back and then try to go above 100,000? We'll be watching to see how it unfolds as the bulls and bears fight it out. Even though we've started the pullback, I wanted to make you aware of that we still are in a risk-on environment, at least so far. Now, if we move into a risk-off environment and remain that way, you can get a much, much bigger sell-off. So I'll be watching. The signals they've marked pullbacks at that bottom of 52,000. We've had pullbacks here since 52,000. Ever since we, again, bounced around that 100 period moving average, the signal for risk on has been consistently bullish, and the trend turned back to bullish at that time. Talked about that at the time, setting off the 100 period moving average. Going to get a bigger sell-off. This would have to go to risk off and remain risk off for an extended period of time. Well, momentum is shifting in the daily time frame. Again, the trend is still bullish, and the weekly signals are still bullish. The bulls are still in control. Going back, now we need to be watching what happens. Support the channel with the link directly below that allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you like the charts, you like the indicators, let me know that by supporting the channel today. Thank you for your consideration for that. Watch the video all the way through towards the end. You'll see line counts are playing out at resistance in the weekly time frame. Also see, if you watch the video, momentum signals are shifting back to bearish. That could open the door for a bigger sell-off with Bitcoin. Okay, the Tuesday session has started. We're a few hours into it, but I wanted to let you know that with the session that we just had closed for Monday, momentum officially shifted. I told you that, again, the signals were warning. There was risk of that happening, and it did. We ended up dropping over 5% with this bar right here below the 10 period. Now we're trying to go back and test the 10 period, try to rebound, recouping some of those losses. At the moment, we're up about 2%. How we close on the Tuesday session, we still have a lot of the session left. We're just a few hours into the session at this point, so we'll be watching to see what happens. But again, momentum has officially shifted. Can Bitcoin still move above 100,000? Yes, it can. We see momentum shift back to bullish. But right now, there's risk of a bigger pullback because momentum has officially shifted in the daily time frame. Now, I look at a couple of things with that. Here, I look at the ribbon. Are we above or below the ribbon where we drop below it with a 5% sell-off? It turned to red. Is it red, and are we below it? Sometimes you can drop below it and have the ribbon not turn red. This time, again, it is turning red. When you drop below it, it doesn't immediately turn red. It will shortly thereafter, or you get back above the ribbon. The ribbon is turning red right here. This line here represents the trend. See, it's called these pullbacks. Pretty good here. In the bottom there at 52,000, after we got our higher low. Signals have been consistently bullish. Each time we dropped below the ribbon, we dropped below it, but then got right back above it, marking the pullback and the larger divergence that's set up. So again, this is that momentum has officially shifted to bearish. Just mean a pullback, or it could mean a reversal. We're going to have to watch and see. But the divergences I've been warning you about with momentum and the RSI, those divergences and the divergences on the intraday charts are now playing out. It's a waiting game to see what happens. And again, it still may be After this pullback, Bitcoin still attempts to try to get above 100,000. We'll be watching closely. We're moving now here. We're in not moving in, but we are in the Thanksgiving week holiday. So we're going to have a lighter volume. Bitcoin can easily be manipulated up or down. And momentum shifting here in the daily time frame with the momentum line with that 5% move lower. We have now flipped the bar to red. Even though we're rallying back up, the bar is now red, reflecting momentum. And the momentum line has turned bearish with that bar downward. And we also got the arrow and the X saying, again, that, again, a short-term top has been put in. Again, looking at momentum here, the trend is still bullish, represented by the swing move with this green line right here. The cloud is actually still bullish at the moment. And then we have the balance of power down here, still in positive territory at the moment. We'll see if that goes negative or not. If it does go negative, there's risk of a bigger move. It goes negative and remains that way. And I warned you in my last update that, again, we got the circle here warning of a possible short-term top. Again, it had stalled out over here. We went sideways, and then it started to move again. And again, now stopped here with this bar right here. I warned you about that before the sell-off. At the very beginning of this session right here, before the sell-off really began, these signals had formed. And the T right here warning of a potential short-term top with momentum. And these signals have been pretty good, calling pullbacks and major reversals. I've talked about this quite a bit. Just want to draw your attention that the momentum line has now flipped. So again, if it flips back, we've had corrections where it's turned bearish, but then it flips back and we can resume the advance. And again, there's still the possibility that Bitcoin may exceed the 100,000 level in the near future. We start seeing trend signals all begin to turn bearish. And again, we can get a bigger sell-off. So again, we're going to be watching as the bulls and bears fight it out at our current resistance levels. I talked about previously that this could be the sign of a larger topping process at resistance, something like this, where you get a peak and you go back up and you move slightly higher, or maybe on the back end where, again, a divergence has formed and we just may see a bigger sell-off right here, right now. We'll be watching to see how it unfolds. Again, but I wanted to warn you that the momentum signals officially turned with that 5% decline, which, again, my signals warned was going to happen. They might push a little bit higher and then we can see it, or we might get it immediately. We got it immediately, and now it's being validated with momentum officially shifting here, getting the arrow and a bearish signal, and again, the momentum line turning bearish, and the bars reflecting momentum turning bearish. We'll see if they remain that way. Even with the rally back up, they're still bearish at this point. So we'll be watching to see how it unfolds here. Those divergences, again, momentum got it, the RSI, and other indicators, the daily time frame. But I find these signals to be most useful in calling for reversals or for calling for pullbacks and bottoms. It's amazing bottoms as well. And it's just looking at short-term momentum. Here I have the bars reflecting the trend, and they're still green. Again, look at these signals. I mean, they've been pretty amazing. Okay, we have this signal, this T right here, and again, that's now formed, but we've had these other ones giving us a pullback from 52,000 when we got the bullish buy signals. But let me just look at some of this past data real fast, and you can see, again, these tops have been marked. Again, just short-term momentum turns and momentum with the swing moves, or even just pullbacks. And this is our 52,000 low here at Bitcoin's average price. And again, the pullback here, the pullback here, the pullback here, the pullback here. Again, the swing move down 29% in 8 days. Warned of it before it happened, went a little bit higher. Over here, same thing, our double top pattern. And then over here at the top in March. And again, this divergence right here is very, very similar to what we have right now. But look at these bottoms, pretty amazing. It's just looking at short-term momentum along with the X's here, just looking at short-term momentum. But look at these amazing tops and bottoms have been in harmony with the bullish and bearish divergences that have formed with momentum and on the RSI and other indicators, the MACD, the stochastic, that. Warning you about this divergence that it was setting up, and then we began to see it complete and roll over. And again, we saw price begin to turn down and we dropped 5%. But I warned you before the selling started with that 5% move down. My last update when this session was just starting before this happened, we started into the session as I was making the video, we started to get a little bit of selling pressure, but it ended up being a lot, which is what I warned you could happen with this divergence right here now. And since the 52,000 area way back over here, my signals have been consistently bullish. I've called these pullbacks over and over, right here around the 100 period moving average and the 50 period moving average. But I'm a big believer in the 100 period. We're above the 100 period moving average. Good things happen. You're below it. Bad things happen. I talked about the breakout of the trend line and the back test and told you we were going to get an election rally. Told you we had to clear the 77,000, 78,000 range in order to move to validate this breakout. Again, the bulls clearly took back control with the breakout and then pushing above 77,000, 78,000. But here, the momentum line, it turned as well with this bar on Monday, the very same day that we got it with the momentum line here with the impulse line. The impulse line usually is the first to turn. You get these warning signs, and then the impulse line usually is the first to turn. The momentum line and the impulse line, they turned the same day, which was the Monday session. Now, again, the trend is still bullish. The ribbon, the cloud at this time is still hanging in there. This purple line represents the short-term trend. That's still bullish, and we bounced off of this level right here and on in over here. So again, this has been bullish, finding support at it. And again, if we do end up going lower, this is a level to be watching. To make you aware of that, the impulse line here turned bearish with the sell-off, and I warned you in my last update. Just completed the Sunday session and starting off on the Monday session that there was risk of this because of these signals here. So momentum is back to bearish with the impulse line turning bearish, momentum line turning bearish, and the ribbon showed you on the other chart turning bearish. These are all momentum signals. They've all turned bearish, validating this signal that we got here and the red circle, warning that momentum could be shifting. We might get something like this where you get a warning sign and then you go a little higher and then you see it happen. And that's why I told you we still might push above 100,000, but I told you we could just reverse off of it because we were at the trend lines of resistance in the weekly time frame. So again, warned you about this signal. I'm warning you about the signal with the impulse line turning here and the momentum line turning bearish. Both momentum signals turning bearish. Live it, love it, learn it. I want you to know that we're not only turning down off of the trend lines of resistance that I've talked about at great length and detail, see in this video, but Bitcoin is also turning at the moment off of the 61.8 Fibonacci from Bitcoin's average price down here. Bounced off its average price at 52,000. I talked about that at the time. It got above the 100 period moving average, found support at it. I talked about that at the time. And then we came back up here. Bitcoin soared past the 1.5 Fibonacci expansion from its average price, and now again stalling here at the 1.61 expansion. And if I didn't say one, it's said the 61.8 fib. I meant to say the 1.61 expansion from Bitcoin's average price, and that's where we stalled back over here at the 2021 top. Now pull back, and the bulls can remain in control. We can go to the 2% Fibonacci expansion, the 3% Fibonacci expansion. If we turn here and we end up stalling here or turn down and go back up like we did over here, then again, we start losing the 100. You start losing Bitcoin's average price. That would be bearish like we did over here. We lost those levels and then held below them consistently. Bitcoin's average price, it's not good. Above it, it's great. Got above that 100 period moving average. So again, just something to be aware of, that we're at the 1.61 expansion above Bitcoin's average price. We stalled there here. We stalled there back over here. But here we got above it. We stalled there here, but then eventually, after the January sell-off, back to the 100 period moving average, we got above that level. We stalled there a little bit and got above it, and we went up to the 2% Fibonacci expansion. So just these Fibonacci levels are kind of interesting. You know, look at this. I mean, you stalled at the 2% here. You stalled at the 161 here. You stalled at the 1.5% here, and then you found support here at the Bitcoin's average price, and then found support at the 100 period moving average. So it's pretty interesting. I just want to make you aware that we were turning off of the 161 expansion. As long as we hold above Bitcoin's average price, the 100 period, it's longer term bullish. Reverse off the trend lines, flip in the weekly signals that you're at risk of coming back and taking out these levels. Again, my signals, which are correct, remain bullish in the weekly time frame. Had already turned bullish shortly after 52,000. The trend signals turned bullish with the breakout of the downtrend here, and they remain that way right now. So we're going to be watching sell-off to see what happens. Bitcoin stalling at the 1.61 expansion of Bitcoin's average price, which is this line right here, and the 161 expansion is the green line right there. I warned you about the RSI in the daily time frame. I warned you about momentum and other signals. I told you the MACD can roll over. It's now doing that. This still may evolve into a larger divergence, but I told you again, it looks very similar to this. And again, I was looking for something that looked like this price action that marked the March peak right here, which we talked about at great length and detail. And it looks very similar, and that's now playing out. Now, again, with momentum shifting, now we need to be watching. Okay, does momentum turn bearish and turn immediately back to bullish, and we end up coming back up, in a short amount of time period, back up and end up forming a larger triple divergence or confirming a lower high. But if we do end up forming a triple divergence, we can still move above that 100,000 area. We came up here to, what was it, 99,800. Just a couple $100 away from 100,000. Still very well may reach that level. We blow past it. You've got the 110, 115,000 level of resistance. If we go above 100,000, 102, 103, 104, 105,000, and then turn down, that could just be an overthrow to that level and then turn. The legitimate bull market, you got to have the weekly chart stay bullish with this pullback, eventually be able to clear the resistance level that we're turning down off of in the weekly time frame. I've been talking about it. I'll show you the chart again. But this divergence I talked to you about, again, I told you it might evolve into a larger triple divergence. You get a much bigger sell-off. Just have it play out as a simple divergence here, but it is a triple divergence because we had a tiny little one right here in this first peak that formed right here. If we count that as a peak and this is a peak, again, we might form a larger triple divergence. It's just something worth paying attention to. But the signals warned about this. We saw some volatility with the stock market. Bitcoin there, President Trump came out and warned going to slap 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico if they didn't get their act together, stop all the drugs flowing into the United States, do their part to resolve the border crisis. Saw some volatility with markets and then a recovery. So right now, Bitcoin's currently up. Wall Street likes President Trump's economic policies, but they don't like the tariffs. Back in 2018, when there was tensions with Mexico and China and things like that, there's a lot of volatility surrounding the tariffs. So again, keep that in mind as we go forward to Trump returning to the White House. Wall Street loves a lot of his economic policies and the deregulation and the corporate tax cuts and the tax cuts for individuals and a lot of other things that he's done. Wall Street loves this stuff. They don't like the tariffs, and there's concerns about inflationary pressures with those tariffs. All that with the knee-jerk reaction today, and we'll be watching this that issue going forward. But the divergence I warned you about is now playing out, so we'll be watching to see just how big of a sell-off we get. Do we end up trying to go back and above 100,000, or is it close but no cigar? But the signals warned us correctly, and that is now playing out. We've turned right here with this divergence off of major resistance in the weekly time frame. And now we're seeing the MACD roll over. I told you this very well could happen. It still could be we end up forming a divergence on the MACD, or it just rolls over like we did over here, and that was all she wrote. We had a rebound back up, but getting a lower high, ended up forming a divergence with these two peaks, but got a lower high from this peak. So again, how big of a sell-off we get, and we'll be looking for clues. We'll be watching the indicators, but I wanted to let you know that the divergence is playing out, and it's now flipped momentum. We broke the trend line of the rising wedge, and I warned about all of this. Now, the last major pullback we got a little bit here, kind of went sideways, but this one right here, again, I told you that we were going to go to new highs. We were back testing. You watch, do we go above, if we go higher, above that 77, 78,000 area, and we did. Bulls are clearly in control. They're in control still in the daily time frame. It's just momentum has shifted. If we start seeing the trend shift in the daily time frame, then the bears will regain control. But the bulls are in control in the weekly time frame. Signals are now playing out. Warned you about, just as I warned you, we were going to get a rally before the election. My signals again have been consistently bullish since 52,000. Had a couple of pullbacks, and again, we even called those pullbacks. Signals did a good job in doing that, and again, I talked about the bounce over here off the 100 period, the rally I expected up to 68, 69,000, and then about the pullback here and the rally to 70, 71,000. We exceeded it, went to 73, so I told you we were going to move to new highs because we went just $200 under this level right here, and it was likely we were going to push above that level after the next pullback, which my signals did call correctly. Now, I do want to tell you something, and that is here on the RSI. Again, when we had the pullback here, after this peak right here, we pulled back to the 100. I told you we were going to rally higher, and again, bounce off the 100, the pink line right there, the 50 was at the same level, and it's what I told you to watch for is bounce off the 100 and the RSI getting back into positive territory. Now look, the RSI got into positive territory, or above 50, I should say, which is positive. The upper positive region of the indicator, it remained positive. We had a divergence here that gave us the pullback and the back test of the breakout of the trend line right here, but the RSIs remained positive. Now, if we start dropping below 50, then we're going to get a bigger sell-off. But I could tell you this, drop below 59 on the RSI in the daily time frame will open the door to drop below 50. If we drop below 59 and then we start dropping below the 50 level, then we'll get a bigger sell-off. Here, we did that, but we came down and we found support at the 50 level. These moves over here, we dropped below 50 level and ended up getting a bigger sell-off. But watch the RSI. Does it hold above 50? And again, if we start seeing momentum begin to turn back to bullish, then again, we won't get as big a sell-off. But if we start losing 59 and then losing 50, Bitcoin will get a bigger sell-off. That Bitcoin had formed a 13.9 over here with this peak that we previously got, but we corrected sideways. We had a little bit of a pullback, pretty much got the sideways move. We went higher. I told you we had another 9 count in play. We only got up to bar 7 and it went away. Again, these counts show price exhaustion, and again, here we got this 13.9. We went a little bit higher, and now we've seen this pullback. Before we got that, we corrected sideways with the 9 count. I could have completed by Tuesday. It got canceled out, but I warned you that as we got this push higher, just above the 13.9, we got that 9 count in the weekly time frame. Talked about this in great length and detail in my video yesterday. Again, we closed out the week. I talked about this right when we finished the session and moved into the Monday session before the big sell-off happened. Monday we saw, again, over a 5% drop. Now we're rebounding. Currently, at the moment, Valley's losing steam. We're down for the week about 4.5%. But I was warning you that we were getting this 9 count as we were going up and slamming right into resistance levels. Talked about on this chart at great length and detail. Again, turning off of these levels right here, right now. And I told you that, again, that could give us a pullback or reversal. If you can eventually pull back and get above them, then again, this upper boundary channel then comes into play, which would be about 110 to 115,000. But it is possible that this is all she wrote in this area right here. sell off and still come back and revisit these levels in a couple weeks, like we did over here. And, we had a peak, we sold off. 3 weeks later, we were back testing the highs. Similar situation over here about 5 weeks later. But this as well may just be it. We can pull back and clear this level, then we can resume the advance. We've come up to the next level of resistance after the bulls cleared this resistance right here, flipped the trend signals back to bullish. Now we've stalled at this next level of resistance. As we're stalling at this next level of resistance, we're getting that 9 count in the weekly time frame last week right at this trend line right here. I told you these lows could be pointing to the next high, just as these lows over here were pointing to the high in 2021 at 69,000. I pointed out not only is Bitcoin getting a 9 count, and I told you MicroStrategy was getting a 9 count, could be a huge warning sign for Bitcoin. MicroStrategy got that 9 count, got a topping tail. We saw that big move up on the daily chart, gapping higher and going up by 15%, and then it reversed in one day, giving us a bearish engulfing, up to 18%, back to 15% in the daily time frame, giving us this topping tail here in the weekly time frame, and up to another 18% below the previous day's close on the daily chart. This is the weekly chart. We're down for the week right now. We'll be watching 9 counts closely. MicroStrategy here in the weekly time frame. MicroStrategy in the daily got a bearish engulfing here. That was, again, the 15% move higher. And then we closed 18% below this low right here. So again, you just had this nosedive of over 30% from the highs there. And again, a potential reversal bar has to be confirmed and get a follow through. But again, a possible warning sign for Bitcoin, as I said at the time, and that's now happening. We're now seeing the volatility with Bitcoin. Often will follow MicroStrategy's lead. Told you on the Bitcoin ETF, IBIT, again, we got that 9 count. We got a 13 followed by a 9, which is a reversal pattern at those trend lines of resistance with Bitcoin. This is problematic as we're getting these 9 counts showing price exhaustion in the weekly time frame as we're slamming into major resistance on Bitcoin's weekly chart. Not only do we have a 9 count that formed last week on Bitcoin, the Bitcoin ETF, MicroStrategy, but you got it on NVIDIA too. And again, the most two assets with the most real volatility, one representing the stock market, which is NVIDIA. NASDAQ follows NVIDIA, and Bitcoin. Again, these two assets have a huge amount of volatility, big moves up, big moves down, getting 9 count sell signals, perfected signals. Back over here for NVIDIA, and it gave us a pretty big drop. NASDAQ dropped 16% at that time. Again, it's hitting a major trend line of resistance. I talked about this recently on my stock channel. That's the problem. We're turning off a major trend line of resistance, and now is breaking down from a rising wedge. The daily time frame risk this week that we confirm this topping tail. So again, this could be problematic for the NASDAQ and could cause the NASDAQ to end up diverging with the S&P 500, which again, I think the S&P is going to go higher. It's in a topping process. Thanksgiving week tends to be positive for the market. Lighter trading volume as the big money takes an early vacation, the institutions and the retail investors to go higher. Now, again, we'll see what happens tomorrow in the trading session with the announcement of these tariffs. Just wanted to make you aware of what's going on with NVIDIA, Bitcoin, MicroStrategy, and the Bitcoin ETF. They're all getting these 9 counts. Could be problematic going forward, but could lead to reversals rather than just pullbacks. Be aware of that. Again, I talked about the trend lines, and again, we overthrew this trend line from these previous highs in 2021 ever so slightly, and we've come back up to this trend line and turned. These lows could be pointing to the next high if we get a bigger sell-off. And again, we've talked about the possibility of a larger divergence developing. This looks very similar to what we had back over here with these two peaks over here, but we've gone much higher. Still have a divergence. Like I said, it may not be done yet. If we can just pull back and resume the advance and get above this area, then you have the upper boundary of the channel around 110,000, 115,000. Again, if we take our time to reach it 120, if we reverse here and top, then again, we'll be looking for clues for diversions to play out. It very well could be that a divergence terminates a rally. Larger diversions here, we know recession is coming. It's going to be very difficult for Bitcoin to have a bull market with the recession. It can have a bullish phase here ahead of the recession if the recession is delayed into the first or second quarter of 2025. It could show up sooner than we all think. 2007, I made a video about that. Go watch it. I'll link it at the end of this video. Talked about how the recession just showed up very quickly, and the Fed freaked out and did an emergency rate cut. They panicked. See a very similar situation here. And again, nobody thinks that a recession is going to happen. Nobody thinks there's anything to worry about. Even Powell is coming out and saying, "Oh, there's no hurry to cut. Hurry to cut interest rates. Be strong." And again, this is the same nonsense that they said right before the recession hit. And go watch the video and you'll see it all out. Pretty amazing. If you haven't watched that video, you need to watch that video so you understand. Talk about a recession. What I'm talking about here, the deterioration in the labor market that is clearly warning we're going to have problems. Now, we continue to have a 2050 bullish signal. We're above the 20-week moving average. We're above 50 on the RSI. Divergences are forming. Turn off these trend lines without getting above 100,000. Then we'll be watching, do the weekly signals turn back to bearish? Again, Bitcoin follows the 20-week moving average in the weekly time frame. When you're above it, good things are happening. When you're below it, bad things are happening. When we got above it here and we pulled back to the 20 and we pulled back to the 100 in the daily, I talked about that at the time, and I told you again we were headed up to the trend line going towards 68, 69,000. That happened. Talked about that at 52,000. And the bulls were able to break the trend line, and we were able to flip the trend signals. Momentum had already flipped back to bullish in the weekly time frame. My momentum signals, and then the trend signals are bullish. So as long as they remain bullish, the bulls are in control. But we're watching this area to see, is the rally going to stall out here? And that's going to be all she wrote. It's going to have legs and continue onward and upward. The recession is going to be delayed into early 2025. We're going to be watching this closely. Bearish is dropping back below the 20-week moving average eventually and dropping back below the 50. As long as we hold above the 50, as long as we hold above the 20, again, we're very far above it. The bulls are in control. So off, we've had a significant move higher in November here. But as I've said, it could be a final climax high, a blow off top. Much like what we had over here and over here. The MACD forming a very similar looking divergence that we had over here. Now again, the divergence may take some time to complete. We still may end up going higher, so do keep that in mind. The bulls are still in control. I'm just telling you momentum has flipped, so now we need to be watching closely. Just get a pullback? Did we get a reversal? Or did we just pull back and still dance around this trend line before getting a bigger pullback or a potential reversal? So just some things to be paying attention to, these resistance levels I've been talking about.